Sales training experts make sales training easy. In this short video, Paul Kidston will discuss the Sales Playbook Development Program. The program repurposes your current standard operating sales procedures into an interactive on-demand learning management system. It delivers cost-effective and scalable sales training that can be delivered anytime, anywhere. Paul Kidston is the managing partner of Sales Training Experts. He specializes in sales team optimization programs. Over the past 10 years, his optimization programs included the repurposing, development and documentation of sales playbooks with enterprise organizations like Irving Oil, Shanex Group, Westmont Hospitality, and Choice Hotels. With his team, he has led the development of over 30 sales playbook programs, which has resulted in amazing sales team productivity improvements. Paul is a certified sales leader and a certified sales professional with the Canadian Professional Sales Institute. He was instrumental in the creation of one of the first Canadian MBA sales leadership programs offered through the University of Fredericton. He works with international and local sales leadership teams to optimize selling systems and improve sales and sales leadership skills that help create an exceptional customer experience.
I'd like to thank all the sales leaders who have taken their time today to watch this session. To understand this program in context, it is part of the sales performance improvement process. So sales performance improvement covers a lot of ground, topics like sales team design, compensation, training, coaching, and of course, sales playbook development programs. So why does this program exist? It exists because it solves a problem shared by almost all sales leaders. So everyone knows that sales training is an important part of the sales performance improvement process. But not all sales training requires an instructor, manager, or coach for it to be delivered. In fact, almost all sales training can be delivered asynchronously online. It can be trained, measured, and managed with a click of a button. So instructor-led training takes up way too much time doing the same training for multiple cohorts in remote geographic locations. If this all sounds too familiar, it is part of why this program exists. One of the issues with instructor-led training, of course, is the difficulty of managing and measuring participant competency levels. So instructors have participants fill out feedback forms at the end of every session, but seldom measure the participants' understanding of the material that was just trained. So valuable selling time gets wasted by sales managers who are constantly training reps on things like order entry procedures, product specifications, CRM input requirements, or simply training on the newest product or service that's being launched. So reps don't want to be in classes. That's no surprise. They want to be selling. After all, that's what you pay them to do. The Sales Playbook Development Program is a solution for sales leaders just like you, and let me explain why. First of all, in order to understand the context of the program, let me level set you on some of the key definitions I'll be referencing. Standard operating sales procedures are fairly self-explanatory, but for greater clarity, they include the policies and procedures to sell a product or service sell sheets, the ERP order requirements. These are all the internal systems that you use to process orders. CRM input requirements along the sales cycle, and frequently asked questions with the corresponding answers. Sales playbooks are different than standard operating sales procedures. Sales playbooks are sales cycle indexed. The indexing makes them sales rep friendly. Reps simply reference where they are in the sales cycle, and then they can find all the resources they need to complete a stage or a step in the sales process. The real value in the Sales Playbook Development Program is the optimization in your standard operating sales procedures. It's done by scaling proven, repeatable sales processes and then building a training system that ultimately trains your company's sales playbook. In order to fully appreciate the scope of the work that we complete in this area, I want to introduce you to this model. Some form of this sales cycle is likely familiar to you. From lead generation to closing a sale, every sales organization has some type of sales cycle. When sales leads turn into prospects and prospects turn into customers, we shift from the sales cycle to the customer service cycle. In here we have product and service delivery, customer service, customer retention programs, these sorts of things. Standard operating procedures, or SOPs, are normally associated with the customer service cycle. Most companies have policies and processes well documented and trained in this area of the business. And by logical extension, you would think, most companies should have their standard operating sales procedures documented and trained as well. Unfortunately, research and our client experiences demonstrate that most organizations don't have a well-defined and documented set of standard operating sales procedures. This is a significant performance gap in the sales cycle. You would think that it would be pretty easy to take your standard operating sales procedures and convert them into a sales cycle indexed sales playbook. This is normally, unfortunately, what we see at the beginning of a program. These files come from all four corners of your organization. They have some or all of the key elements of a sales playbook, but they're normally gaps exposed by inconsistencies between reps, managers, and sales support departments. Oftentimes, we're reconciling a lot of these files to make sure that we're getting the right information, of course, being delivered into your sales playbook. We often help organizations in final drafts of their standard operating sales procedures and then convert them into a sales playbook. This helps us to ensure that all the relevant material is in there. And frankly, there are a lot of key pieces of information that are uncovered through this process. And oftentimes information that sales leaders and or all of the staff wanted to include as part of the standard operating sales procedures, but either had kind of put it on the top shelf or hadn't had the opportunity to think about it in context in the sales cycle. And as a result of coming through this process, a lot of this material finds its way into the standard operating sales procedures and then, of course, into the sales playbook, which is great. This ensures we have inventoried all of your tools used by your sales team. And of course, it identifies all those tools that are missing, as I mentioned earlier. As part of reorganizing the sales playbook, we begin the work of identifying how to chunk up that material into trainable modules. Sales performance improvement with any sales team starts with including the team in the change management process. And I'm going to talk further about this later on. Once the sales playbook is completed, we proceed to create a learning experience for all participants. So the LMS is the cloud-based learning platform used to deliver, measure, and manage online training programs. The LMS still needs to be populated with courses. And this is where we can further help. With years of experience creating LMS sales training courses, we will take your sales playbook and then convert it into repeatable training programs. We will maximize the entire sales team effort that helped establish your sales playbook. Then that will result, of course, in anytime, anywhere training that is automated and asynchronous. You and your team will spend more time selling and less time training. Now I'll walk you through some of the details of the 5 steps in the sales playbook program. Each step in the path represents best practices in the development of a sales playbook and learning management system. So what makes our 5-step system unique is the work product we produce at each milestone along that path. So clients are normally pretty impressed with how quickly the program is completed given the large scope of work that we actually do. In step 1, we recognize that improving the sales performance of a team does require their participation in the change management process. That just makes sense. I'll walk you through how that whole process works a little later on. In step 2, we map your sales cycle. So the sales cycle stages and steps help outline the modules and chapters of the sales playbook. So it gives the book structure. In step 3, we will inventory, develop, or revise sales tools along that sales cycle. Those tools are easily accessible, logically ordered along the sales cycle, and they're used more often and with greater skill from your sales team. In step 4, It's time to create your sales playbook. So as a result of your complete team's engagement process, your sales team is now committed to their new sales playbook. One of the big insights in doing this program is how committed and well understood sales playbooks become by sales teams and organizations. It almost reminds me of a football team that has all the various all the various playbooks that they use for all the field plays that they do. Watching a sales team work on those plays and with their sales playbook, it's interesting how their contribution to the whole process, it makes the program theirs. It makes the sales playbook theirs, as opposed to being something the company gives them. It's something that they've participated in, and it's part of their everyday routines. And so they all feel a greater commitment to to perform flawlessly along those procedures and to improve those procedures along the way as new information, competitors, new products, new services, all that sort of stuff come into the marketplace. The sales team just tends to be far more engaged around how they go about doing the sales process compared to when we first started the program. Then finally, in step 5, we create repeatable sales training programs in your LMS linked to specific information in your sales playbook. So from detailed procedures to an engaging sales training program, new and existing reps learn best practices, product training, CRM, and ERP training on demand, anytime, anywhere. Now I'll review some of the details of this program. In step 1, we recognize that improving sales team performance of a team, of course, requires their participation in that change management process. That's pretty fundamental to this program. If we were to remove that part of the program away from the sales playbook development program, the success of the program would be very minimal. So I'll share with you as an insight that getting your team involved in this process is important. And having a system to get the team involved, especially with all this remote working today with the pandemic, COVID-19 restrictions, having the systems in place to do all of that is really important as well. And we'll explain what some of our systems are to engage your team. Sales reps, sales leaders, and support staff bring years of experience and expertise. We can't forget about that. At Sales Training Experts, we too have years of experience in managing and organizing sales playbook programs. So we have all those systems and models and engagement tools to keep everyone participating and moving forward remotely. But first we need to level set a sales rep's performance in tactical and strategic selling skills. So level setting the team's knowledge of best sales practices provides them some points of comparison to self-assess tactical and strategic selling skills. So gaps between best and current practices then become obvious to all participants. So we accomplish this through both e-learning and live online group workshops. Let me explain. Self-paced e-learning level sets best selling practices and strategic and tactical selling skills. And here are some of the e-learning courses and what your team will learn. Consultative Selling is a foundational course that shares best practices in territory, account, prospect, and call planning. It includes topics like self-motivation techniques and the sales professional's toolkit, territory planning, account planning, prospect planning, of course, call planning. All of these things are very fundamental, and this is a great course to level set everybody on your team so we all have a common language, a common set of definitions, a common approach or a common sales model. Many sales leaders come to me and they say, Paul, we want to install a common sales methodology in our company. Everybody kind of runs and does their own thing. We want to install that so that we have that methodology moving forward, so we have a consistent plan that everybody's working towards, in terms of their training development. This is a great first course to do that. Handling objections is a logical next step when level setting a sales team's skill sets overall. So let's talk about handling objections specifically. And in here, we talk about things like price-based objections, authority, trust, complacency, competitor. All of these are the types of objections that reps are dealing with every day. This is a great course right after consultative selling because it expands on one of the critical tactical skills that are so important for sales reps when they're in the field, and that's how to handle objections when customers give them it so often in the sales process. How does a rep deal with those? And this is a great course for that type of training. Negotiation skills are different than skills required for handling objections. Negotiation skills are required when clients are committed to the purchasing process, but have objections to parts of the proposal that can't be handled through the objection handling techniques. So these important client objections, of course, need the skills of an effective negotiator. In this class, we cover the 7 steps in pre-planning, setting negotiation goals, building a business case, and the 7 steps in the negotiation meeting, along with negotiation plays. All of these things, of course, all very critical in the capacity building and skill building of a sales team. In the presentation skills class, we cover best practices in client, prospect, and internal support presentations. This is a great program for sales representatives. For all you sales leaders that have taken your sales reps through various presentation skills courses and said, hey, that was a decent presentation course, but it didn't necessarily talk about sales presentations. It talked about presentations generically. Or we cover the topics and skill building exercises in the 5 types of business development presentations, the 2 types of account management presentations, and a complete best practice review of interactive presentation tools, including PowerPoint, flip charts, and webinars. This course is based on understanding your client's expectations before pitching a solution. So this is a presentation skills course for sales professionals. Strategic thinking is great for both business development reps and account managers. Oftentimes, sales teams and their leadership teams think that strategic thinking skills are largely for territory account managers or strategic account managers. But strategic thinking skills are equally important to both new business development representatives and strategic account managers. This course is great for both. It shares best practices in things like understanding the key elements of strategic thinking and how it applies to the sales process. It explores the topics of critical thinking from a client's perspective as the client works their way through the purchase decision. It further introduces best practices in conflict management when the client doesn't agree with parts of your solution. Finally, and with everything your team has learned in the previous courses, we take an advanced approach to territory, account, prospect, and call planning. So territory management right-sizes the planning process into specific sales rep positions. So we take a deep dive into best practices demonstrated by each of the 4 types of territory managers. We also add new territory tools into the toolkit. So we explore best practices with the 2 types of business development representatives as well. Participants are then required to complete their plans for review and feedback. I can share with you that this course is absolutely wonderful for a complete sales team, because oftentimes sales teams consist of account managers and new business development representatives. Oftentimes, these cohorts or these groups are often broken up in instructor-led programming, where we have one group, working on new business development types of best practices, and we have account managers working on account management types of best practices. This course is great because it combines all of those And what we see is account managers seeing best practices from new business development reps and going, hey, I think we should bring those in, to what we're doing. Or the other way around, new business development representatives recognizing some of the best practices in territory and account management, and account managers particularly, and saying, hey, we should bring in some of those skills into our new business development role. So there's lots of, so participants are then required, of course, when they complete this course, to complete their sales plans for review and feedback. So it's recommended that participants of the Sales Playbook Development Program take all 6 e-learning courses. Why? There's a lot of information in here. If you've ever had reps say, when they take a course, they'll go, well, I took a few good things out of that course. Well, in this particular case, there's 6 different courses, and there are lots of things here that when you're level setting your sales culture as a sales leader, and you're trying to get everybody talking the same language, using the same selling systems, all that sort of stuff. In here, this is a great program this way in that it level sets everybody along all of the key elements of tactical and strategic selling skills. So each self-paced e-learning course takes approximately about 10 hours to complete. Most sales leaders ask me that. But remember, it's self-paced. So normally what we do is let's say you have a sales team of 30 people. Then what we would do is we would put them all in the e-learning programs at the beginning of the course, at the beginning of this program. And they would be self-paced. We would let them know that they have a certain amount of time to complete these. We have a pretty good eye on them on our learning management system, so we know exactly how they're progressing. And of course, we are communicating with them through these programs. So it's not like we've abandoned them on e-learning. We haven't at all. In fact, we have some asynchronous coaching stuff that goes on in these programs. We have lots of feedback going on back and forth from the instructor, plus all of the various participants. This is very much a very interactive type of experience for your sales reps. So the 10 hours that it takes for them to complete each one of these courses, you do the quick math, it's about 60 hours of training. That's what they're going through. Now that doesn't account, of course, for the live online workshops that go along with these. But you can see from here that certificates will be awarded at the end of each one of these programs. And sales reps love being part of them because it does allow them, of course, to level set their skills for experienced reps, and for new reps, it brings everybody up to speed. Each of the 6 courses discussed has a companion set of 4 live online workshops. So live online workshops compare current selling practices to best selling practices and help close the skill gap. Remember, they've already taken all their courses, so now these live online workshops are skill and knowledge integration workshops. So how many times over the years have sales leaders said to me, I wish we could get all the knowledge with people before we bring them all together into a big group, so that the instructor doesn't have to instruct or get people to read materials before a class so that everybody is up to speed. Because we oftentimes know that if I bring a class of 30 people in, for example, in an instructor-led program, ask them all to read the materials before they show up in class, about 50% do, and about 50% don't. So what do you do with the group that don't? Well, you spend most of your time in those classes explaining concepts, trying to make sure that everybody in the class is up to speed before we start talking about integration and all these sorts of things in terms of their daily routines and best practices. So keep in mind that every participant has now already taken the relevant e-learning courses at this stage in the Sales Playbook Development Program. In live online workshops, the facilitator is comparing course tools, concepts, and selling systems to the current participant best practices. So each live online workshop has the objective of identifying gaps and then agreeing on a new skill, tool, or sales procedure to fill that gap. During the live online workshops, the facilitator will review current selling tools to determine new or revised tool requirements. They make note of when those tools were used in the sales cycle, its effectiveness, and of course, the feedback provided by the team on its use. The tools are partially categorized and inventoried right at this time for future reference. New and revised sales tool requirements are now partially identified and inventoried by your facilitator. These online workshops also help the facilitator review current sales rep experiences and sales automation technologies. The live online workshops are a great way to determine the CRM and ERP input requirements of sales reps. So although we can't get like a keystroke by keystroke account of these requirements in a live online class, the facilitator can flag these requirements in the class discussions for further follow-up and details with the leadership team. Last but not least, the live online workshops help the facilitator review current measurement, training, and coaching support through class discussions. So we talk about things like in the measurement side, what KPIs are we actually measuring along the sales cycle? How will those KPIs used to help measure and manage progress and progression for each one of the reps who work through those sales cycles? We talk about current training that the reps have already had. Maybe you've had some selling systems put in place. Maybe you've done work with Sandler or some of the other types of training programs that are out there. And so we'll have to make sure that we don't abandon some of the key concepts that these reps have previously learned. In fact, we just want to make sure that we integrate them into the Sales Playbook development program. So this information is flagged in class for future reference and further discussion in Step 2 of the Sales Playbook Development Program. So after the completing of the 6 e-learning courses and the 4 live online workshops that support each course, the facilitator is ready to report back to you and your senior leadership team. The facilitator will produce a gap report for the senior leadership team. So you'll get a report that will review and assess sales rep performance and tactical and strategic selling skills. So those were all those 6 courses that I just previously talked about. A preliminary sales tool review and inventory. Remember I told you we were partially accounting for each one of these tools as we were going through those classes. Preliminary review and assessment of sales automation technology. So that includes user experiences with the current CRM or internal ERP system. I can let you know we discovered lots of stuff in there. One client that we worked on had a CRM system and was wondering why reps were not inputting the information properly. We had done a user experience review with that client, had determined that most of the fields that the sales leader was looking to have filled couldn't be filled because of the way the CRM was programmed. So when we went through the user experience, we had discovered that, and many of the reps had kind of given up telling the sales leadership team that it just didn't work. And some reps had figured out a workaround to make it happen. In both instances, reps were frustrated with the CRM system, and as a result of some of the user experience report through this gap report that we had done, they were able to bring that whole system back in line properly, and it was a huge benefit to them. A preliminary report on the sales performance measurements like KPIs, training, and coaching support will also be completed. So we'll give you some recommendations go forward about things that you might want to do after the Sales Playbook Development Program in terms of how you might encourage, manage, and measure sales representatives through the KPIs that you're currently measuring. So at this stage in the Sales Playbook Development Program, after reviewing the gap report with the leadership team, we may need to adjust the current project plan based on new information discovered in that gap report. So the good news is that at this stage in the program, your team has now completed all the strategic and tactical selling skills training. They have received their certificates, and they have fully participated in helping to develop the sales playbook. Now let's talk about Step 2 in the program. Step 2 is the sales cycle stages. So we outline the stages and steps of your team's sales cycle. The sales cycle stages and steps help outline, as I mentioned earlier, the modules and chapters of the sales playbook. This funnel probably looks familiar to you, but the devil is in the details. Every sales playbook mirrors the sales cycle of the organization, and every organization, it be different. Generic or off-the-shelf CRM solutions that fail to capture the company's unique sales cycle is the leading cause for low levels of CRM adoption by the sales team. So essentially, if you don't have the sales cycle right and you give a system to the sales team that doesn't match up with what they do every day, then they spend most of their time trying to figure out how to put a square peg into a round hole. And although that sounds crazy, I'm sure some of you who are listening to this go, that might have been or might be the issue I'm currently facing right now. When we go through the sales playbook development process, what we sometimes see is that people look at their current CRMs and they say, we need to have this reflect better what our sales playbook looks like. And they'll come in and they'll make some reconfiguration changes to the way their CRM is currently set up to better reflect what the sales playbook is all about. Playbooks that don't closely mirror that everyday routines of the sales team, they do gather dust or a lot of frustration by the sales leadership team. That's why we work extra hard to get this right. So seems like a simple thing, but as noted earlier, the devil is in the details. So we'll draft the preliminary outline of your sales playbook and then vet it with you and your leadership team. Then your leadership team will share this information with key sales rep influencers to validate the playbook outline. So in here, what we tend to do is we tend to find sales team champions. So let's say you have a sales team of 30 people. You might have a few people in there that are fairly vocal and are leaders in that group. What we'll tend to do is we'll bring them in as sales playbook champions as part of the change management process, and we'll ensure that they have a voice in this process. Hard to get the whole team, 30 reps all involved in that, but if we got enough of the key influencers involved in it, it doesn't tie up too much of the sales team's time doing this, and at the same time, it ensures that everyone will be on side with the program if the influencers are on side. In step 2, we then proceed to fill out all the details under each of the stages and steps. So this mapping process often includes defining and documenting best lead pool sources. Then we assign a rating system based on the viability and productivity of each lead pool. Then moving along the sales cycle, we'll document the current practices at each customer touchpoint. Some of these current practices, I'll let you know, get adjusted as both reps and leadership teams see opportunities to right-size their market approach based on COVID-19 restrictions, new competitors or new product offerings or other types of considerations. So we go through the whole documentation process, and many times it is a work in progress because we'll put together what everybody's doing right now. Then reps or leadership team members will look at it and go, we've been doing this for a long time, but the reality is we should be changing some of that based on some of this work we're doing now. So we'll tend to be changing this information along the way as we map out this sales cycle in stages. I'll just remind you, this is kind of what I was talking about earlier about the standard operating sales procedures oftentimes being in files, not necessarily all together. This kind of finds its way to the surface here at this step. The facilitator will do a complete review of the sales rep user experience and with your current CRM and or your internal ERP system used for order entry. They will document the system input steps required by your sales rep. This information will be later used to train new reps on how to use these internal systems. Again, in here, we tend to see where the issues lie, right? So I'll just let you know, in here, we'll oftentimes see automation issues, either with your ERP system or with the CRM system. And we'll flag those things and see if we can get them fixed, of course, before we proceed to move everything to the learning management system. The first draft of the sales playbook is then given to the sales leadership team, And during this time, revisions are made to current policies and procedures. Then we adjust the sales playbook for these revisions. So now let's take a deeper dive into sales tools. This takes us to step 3 in the sales playbook development program. As a reminder, your facilitator has been the key contact and interface with you and your sales team through the entire sales playbook development program. From the information gathered through the facilitator's live online workshops with your sales team and the meetings held with your senior leadership team to finalize the sales playbook outline, a preliminary tool list has already been started. So it's now time to complete the tool list. The list is often very extensive. The tools normally fall under one of 4 categories, depending on where the tool is used in the sales process. So sales leaders are surprised on how large the list becomes, and equally surprised about the gaps that currently exist. We normally spend some time in organizing this list and assisting our clients in the identification, development, or the revision of tools as required. In summary, the finalized sales playbook can now be created and approved. It has included your sales team's involvement. A preliminary gap report was created to identify gaps and optimizing the entire sales process. Then a sales cycle map was hard-coded into the sales playbook outline. The stages and the steps then became place markers for the tools used along the sales cycle. The next draft of the sales playbook is now delivered to the sales team. Now we get to work and convert your sales playbook into a learning management system. From detailed procedures to an engaging training program, new and existing reps can now learn best sales practices on demand, anytime, anywhere. I won't be covering the entire conversion process in this video. It's a much bigger conversation, depending on the specific requirements. But this presentation gives you a pretty good idea about the scope of work required to complete the sales playbook development program. So we started this presentation by outlining some of the biggest complaints sales leadership teams have with their current training programs and systems. Leaders want training that is easily accessible to everyone. They want to know if every participant fully understands the concepts, tools, and selling systems trained in these programs. They want their sales managers focused on driving sales results by coaching their sales teams in the skills required to achieve their sales goals. And sales leaders want their reps in front of potential customers more often, and they want to optimize their sales training efforts to accomplish that. So in this session, I've reviewed the key elements of our sales playbook development program. The biggest benefits from this program are improved training program delivery. It's more effective and it's more efficient to have this all put on a learning management system. We want to improve tactical and strategic selling skills. Remember, your team has gone through all 6 courses and have gone through, 60 hours of e-learning, plus the time that they've spent on the live online workshops, integrating the material into their current sales playbooks. We've improved sales team field engagement in the whole process, of course, by including the entire sales team as part of the process. There's more time selling, there's more time coaching, and there's less time training. On a personal note, I think the sales playbook development program is something that sales training experts does very, very well. I say that because we've got so much experience in this area. As the lead project consultant and facilitator in many of these programs, I have come to appreciate the long-term positive impacts to my clients and their selling efforts. Most importantly, my clients have now scaled their sales operations and training systems. It makes their sales teams more productive, their managers more available, and the entire sales process more organized and efficient. Some of my clients' downstream impacts include lower sales rep turnover, higher employee satisfaction, improved sales team performance, and a substantial long-term reduction in training and traveling costs. All of these things are all very important to the clients we work with. So, as I mentioned earlier at the beginning of this presentation, if you have any questions, give me a call or send me an email. Let's set up a time to discuss your team's training requirements. This could be the right program for you, or you may want to take a look at some of our individual courses. Either way, give us a call. I'd be happy to talk with you. All the best. Take care.